Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill, an episode that I'm fired up to get into. We've talked about this Michigan football team just about every single possible way you can possibly can over the last couple of weeks and months. As you roll out of spring practice, as you roll out of the spring transfer portal, look, you got a sense of what these football teams are going to be going into 2025. Now it's, for lack of better terms, it's time to call your shot. Bold predictions for this Michigan football team heading into 2025. Before we get into it, as always, to the Michigan fans, please let it fly in the comment section. Like, as Michigan fans ourselves, it's been a blast talking ball with y'all in the comment section. And we say this for just about every episode we do in the off season. Like, if you're a Michigan fan watching this in the middle of May, y'all got some takes that you want to get off your chest. Call your shot in the comment section. Dill, this is the opportunity for all of us to call our shots heading into 2025. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, I want to get into my first bold prediction, the rushing attack. Justice Haynes, over 750 yards this year. Jordan Marshall, over 750 yards this year. Bryce Underwood, over 500 yards, rushing the football as a true freshman in the 2025 season. Dill, I don't think the take around Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall is all that bold, right? I think we expect them to kind of have a 50-50 share of the workload. I would think we both expect these running backs to be quite good for Michigan. The Bryce Underwood take, maybe a little bit bold. How are we feeling about Bryce going over 500 yards with his legs in 2025?
When you first hit me with that, I was like, I mean, I kind of like the confidence a little bit, but like 500 yards feels like a
It's a
ton of
lot.
yards for the
Yeah.
quarterback spot. And then you kind of start going over like what quarterbacks have done in the Chip Lindsey offense in the past, and
Yeah.
also what the running backs around them have done. You start to like, yeah, it's not totally crazy. And this is certainly a team that I think is going to be run heavy. I know Chip Lindsey, like, yeah, you think, or at least you like to see them be able to get the ball down the field a little bit
And they
more.
will.
But that's just like that's not going to be the base of this offense at the end of the day. It's still probably going to be about the run game. That's playing into the strengths in Bryce Underwood being a really effective ball carrier, unlike what they were able to do with Orju. Just, I mean, he didn't have it as a ball carrier. There was
No.
something about him that just, like, yeah, he was a pretty good athlete.
And
But he
Dill, that's
wasn't
the thing. Bryce Underwood has it as a ball carrier. Like, go back to what this kid did in high school. He is one of the best athletes on the football field immediately as a freshman. And here's why I kind of lean into this take. I was in it, like, again, as a Michigan fan, I'm trying to convince myself about Bryce Underwood having success year one. I'm looking back at the other true freshmen that have had success year one starting at quarterback. Trevor Lawrence obviously had a lot of weapons around him. He also had Travis Etienne, who went for over 1,600 yards rushing when he was a true freshman at quarterback. You look at Jalen Hurts at Alabama. Obviously, he got it done with his own legs. Damian Harris, Bo Scarborough. You look at Sam Howell at North Carolina, had Michael Carter and Javonte Williams. All of these freshman quarterbacks that have had year one success as starters have had run games to lean on. That's what Chip Lindsey wants to do for Bryce. And I think he's going to use Bryce to help stimulate that run game. He had a second overall draft pick in Drake May at quarterback. Though Drake May, as a sophomore, ran for over 680 yards. And then as a junior, as a guy that was projected to be maybe the number one overall quarterback off the board, ran for 480. I think they use Bryce a decent amount with his legs in 2025. And it's a line to kind of make sure you get right, because you don't want Bryce running the football 25 plus times a game and taking those hits. But you also want to say, hey, you have a unique skill set that we have to utilize at the quarterback position. I feel pretty damn good about potentially Bryce getting more involved than we expect running the football. Number two, 4 different pass catchers going over 400 yards. Now, I think on the surface, maybe that's not all that much of a spicy take. Dale, Michigan had one last year that went over 250. That was Colson Loveland. My reasoning for this bold prediction is I know there's a lot of buzz around Donovan McCulley going into 2025. And look, I'm fired up to see what he can be in 2025. But the way I see this pass catcher room kind of shaking out is I don't know if you have that first team all Big Ten wide receiver, that true wide receiver one. I think you got a bunch of really solid pass catchers that can do some different things, but I don't know if you have that guy you want to get 100 targets to in a season. And so I look at Samaj Morgan, Fred Moore, Donovan McCulley, the tight ends, Hogan Hansen, Marlon Klein. I think they all get a decent amount of opportunity. And if this passing attack can be what we think it can be under Bryce, I think you see a couple of guys get pretty dang heavily involved in the passing attack in 2025.
And this is one I grapple with because, like, yes, I'd like to see a handful of weapons emerge. I think to me, I'd really like to see one or two of these guys get to that 700-800 yard mark because
Yeah, fair.
that's been something I feel like when offenses struggle, it's a lot of times because they
They
don't
don't
have
have the
the
guy.
guy who's dependable and who
Yeah.
can make it happen. Now you kind of look, it does sound like Donovan McCulley is that guy, but you even look like can Freddie Moore, or Samaj Morgan get themselves into that 500, 600, 700
Yep.
yard mark? Can one of the tight ends get themselves over 500? That to me is and I like I like the idea of having a lot of guys be able to get involved. I'd
Yeah.
really love to see one of these guys get to
Look,
that.
I don't know if it's ideal for this bold prediction to kind of play out, but I think that's maybe where Michigan is in the wide receiver room year one under Bryce Underwood. Now, I think for all of us Michigan fans, we expect this to change, but it was going to be very hard for Michigan to change it after the year we had in 2024. I think the whole idea here is, hey, Bryce Underwood as a true freshman with Chip Lindsey coming in, we show what the passing attack can be when he's a freshman. And then next year, when you go to the recruiting trailer, when you go to add in the portal, it becomes a little bit easier to sell these pass catchers on coming to Michigan, which is just kind of a hard sell right now. Dill, I'll ask you this, like, top 3 wide receivers in receiving yards in 2025. Who do you got? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but who do you think are
No,
going to be
I
the top
haven't.
3?
I think it's going to be McCulley. I think it's going
Yep.
to be Samaj, and then I got Hogan
Ooh.
Hansen. I think those three are kind of
Samaj over Freddie?
I've been wrestling with this, and Samaj Morgan. I don't mean to take a ton from off-season quotes, but like sometimes you got to do it because that's all you kind of have to go on right now.
I did see this.
Samaj Morgan kind of saying like, "I'm gonna get back to being a real wide receiver instead of the like pretend bubble screen land that I was living in with Kurt Campbell." That gets me a little excited because I do think there's something there with Samaj Morgan. Like you saw some really good things in his freshman year, and I don't even know like physically he wasn't like a totally developed, ready to rock and roll guy almost. Like, so he's one. I thought that route in the spring game where he was able to get vertically over the top on that cornerback, that tickled me a little bit. I'd love to see Samaj Morgan get like back to rocking and rolling as a wideout.
Look, there was a reason they forced him on the football field as a freshman. It wasn't like Michigan was like devoid of offensive skill in 2023. They made an emphasis to get him the football in some big moments during that national championship year. I do think there's something there. And I will say this. I know Samaj Morgan don't want to be running many screens, and he's not going to be running as many as you saw with Kurt Campbell. Chip Lindsey's way more effective at calling screens. You go back to Chip Lindsey in 2024 running North Carolina, like they leaned into the screens because the quarterback play wasn't great. They'll almost triple the yards per attempt when Chip Lindsey called screens in 2024 in North Carolina than what Kurt Campbell called in 2024. He knows how to dial it up in the right situations. And I think Samaj Morgan can be one of those guys that benefits from it because you look at this Michigan offense, he probably is the most dangerous player in the wide receiver room with the football in his hands. Can Chip Lindsey find creative ways to get that to happen in 2025? Number 3, I don't even think I told you this one. Andrew Sprague, all Big Ten tackle in the 2025 year. Now, I don't know if I'm ready to say first team all Big Ten. I know Michigan fans have a lot of concern about the tackle play going into 2025. I think we got one in Andrew Sprague. I go back to what we saw from him as a freshman against Alabama. Keep in mind, he was not a spring guy. Like he was on campus for about 4 months, 5 months, got thrown out to start at right tackle against Alabama, did a damn good job. Full off season in the weight room, another full sprint, not his first full spring practice, developing in this Michigan program. He's got all the tools, and I think he puts it together and becomes one of the better tackles in the conference.
Yeah, and you know I'm with this one. I loved what you saw from Andrew Sprague in that full game. I'm full ready to like buy in as the next NFL tackle coming out of the University of Michigan.
Yeah, and Dill, we haven't seen it yet. Do you think in fall camp they play around with him at left? Because I think I trust him more left than Evan Link. Now we'll see if that comes to fruition, but I think we got one. And Dill, that's huge. Like, you can't have problems at 2 tackles. And I'm not saying we're going to have a problem with Evan Link, but if you have problems with both tackles, it's hard to protect 2 tackles. If you only have problems with one and you trust the other, you can get a tight end to chip. You can give some running back help. But when you have 2 problems at tackles, that's when you get into hot water. If Andrew Spray can be that guy that I think he can be, takes a lot of pressure off Michigan's offensive line. All right, defensive side of the football, and Dill, this kind of sums up why I'm a believer in Michigan's defense. And you're going to hear, in Michigan fans, just prepare for it, right? We're in May. And not a ton of people talking about the college football season yet. This is going to ramp up in July and August, and you're going to see a lot of these national media analysts get up there and say Michigan's defense is going to stink. Not stink, but not be as good because Mason Graham, Kenneth Graham, Will Johnson leave. And look, I get it. For the casual observer of this Michigan program, you look at 2 top 15 overall picks and another guy that should have been in the first round with all that before the injury. I get how you would be concerned about replacing that. This is how they do it. I'm going to go with 4 guys that go over 5 sacks in the 2025 season. And Dill, the question I'll ask you is, who do you think those 4 guys are going to be? And sorry to, I know I'm kind of occupying some space here. The reason I want to highlight this, look, this Michigan team top end is probably not as good on the defensive line as you were with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. But you're deeper and you got more potential difference makers. Dill, who do you think the 4 guys are that go for 5+ sacks here?
And when you talk top end, I think that depends on how good TJ Guy is this year because he came on in a big way. We know Derek Moore is awesome. I am fully
First-round pick.
convinced that he's first-round level player. TJ Guy could kind of get himself into that day 1, day 2 kind of range, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously, I think him and D Moore are 2 of the guys. If this bold prediction
100%.
comes through, they're clear ones.
So who are the other 2?
Probably I'm gonna go Trey Pierce because I'm a huge and I'm really wrestling with maybe him and Benny both going for it.
Yep.
I think that's a lot to ask for your inside guys. So I'll say one of those guys gets to 5.
Yep.
And then we kind of talked about it when I was like, I would have said maybe something like 3 go for 6 or 7. That would have been my bold take. Yeah, I was forgetting about Jayshon Barham.
He's my guy too.
That's kind of the X factors. How many he can get to?
I don't know if he'll get to 7 or 8. I think he gets to 5. And I think year 2 with Wink Martindale, I think there's a better sense of how we want to let this kid have the maximum imprint on the football game. And I think we all agree. I think Wink Martindale agrees too. Like, it's not going to be exclusively moving to an edge rusher, but you got to use him as a pass rusher more because he's elite at it. The other name I'd probably throw out is Dom Nichols. Like, from what we heard in spring, like, he's a guy that I think could kind of emerge out of nowhere, like TJ Guy emerged out of nowhere last year. And I know they're kind of at different points in their college football career, like TJ Guy coming on year 4. But I do think Dominic Nichols, a guy that we didn't hear about a ton as a freshman, I think comes on in a big way going into year.
And that'll be an interesting one to see how they use this edge room in terms of like in pass rush situations.
Yeah.
Are you going to see all 4 of them, for example? Are you going to see Dom Nichols? Are you going to see Cam Brand, TJ Guy, Derek Moore all together? Are you going to see Jayshon Barham kick down? Like, I think, again, especially because you've got guys like Derek Moore and Dominic Nichols and Cam Brand probably as well, who I think are fully capable of rushing really effectively on the inside. I'd be interested to see how they use these guys in kind of like pass rush packages. Because, again, Wink's even talked about it. Like, that is the strength of this defense. If you talk about your pure best players, it's probably mostly coming from that bedroom.
I agree with that, but do you want to take a guy like Rayshawn Benny off the football field on 3rd and long? That's probably a question.
Like, it's gonna be interesting to see how they use the pass rush packages and what they kind of bring with. Because again, they got a lot of guys in that edge room who can
and I think that's probably. Again, you talk about like how Michigan takes a step on defense. I think it comes from last year was like, all right, can we just get these guys aligned the right way and knowing what they're doing and playing fast and physical? And I thought even early in September, maybe you didn't always totally see that. I think it was still guys adjusting to what Wink Martindale wants to do. There was a flip that got switched in the back half of November, like stifling Ohio State, stifling Alabama. I think going into year 2, now it's about building, and now it's about like what you're saying. All right, what's our maximized pass rush look like? What does that personnel look like? You probably didn't have the luxury of adding some of that stuff into the defense year 1 because we're still learning the basics. Well, year 2, now you have that luxury. All right, back end. This is yours, and I don't look. I'm a Jair Hill guy. This is aggressive. First team All Big Ten. This ain't no second, third team. This is a first team All Big Ten selection for Jair Hill. Look, I think he's got the potential to do it. I think there are a lot of good cornerbacks in the Big Ten. Sell the people on Jair Hill emerging as one of the best cornerbacks in the country in 2025.
I'll sell it the way Wink sold it. Like, there was one clear issue with Jair Hill's game last year, and that was biting on double moves. I
He
feel like
lost the
that's
ball,
like
man.
when I listen to Wink Martindale talk,
Yeah.
he's like, well, if he stops biting on double moves, we got one of like the guys at the cornerback spot.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was the cornerback one for the year last year. I mean, Will Johnson obviously going out with the injury pretty early. I don't know. You didn't see guys dusting him. Like, Jeremiah Smith didn't beat him up. And I know Michigan kind of played a fair amount of zone and kind of like dealt with that in various ways. But I don't know. When did you see big time wideouts killing Jair Hill? Like, the Indiana guys couldn't kill Jair Hill. He was just really, really rock solid. And I think he's going to have a huge year. I'm really excited to see what he can be.
Yeah. I don't hate it because I think that the juice is there. My last bold take is just I think this defense is going to be top 5. I don't even know how bold that is. Like, I'm prepared to say I think that this, in my opinion, this defense has a chance to be the best defense in the country. I think all you need is, all right, on offense, we just got to stay on the field and stop putting our defense in such bad spots. Like, I think this USC game was probably the best example of it in late September, where it's like the defense was playing awesome, was keeping Michigan in the football game, and then the dam just kind of got broke. You give again, there's a lot of good offenses in the Big Ten. You give Lincoln Riley and USC enough opportunities and good positions, the dam's going to break. If this offense can stay on the football field and just stop putting the defense in such bad spots and kind of get back to what Michigan did in 2023, where it was a thing of beauty in terms of complementary football. Offense on 8-minute drives, defense forcing turnovers. Michigan, one of the best teams in the country in terms of time of possession. We got to get back there. And it's not only on the defense. It's about the offense staying on the football field too. And if they can do that, you're going to see one of, if not the best defenses in the country.
Yeah, no, I'm full bought in on this defense. I mean, if Michigan's going to be a really good team, you know it's going to be led by this defense. And you just hope the offense picks it up and is a good, solid unit. And Bryce Underwood certainly gives you a chance to be great, which is like obviously exciting. But you just hope they're solid, because if they're solid, if they were solid last year, Michigan's probably really, really competitive in pretty much every game they play.
And I'll say this: I think you need the defense to be hot early. You know, because especially week 2 on the road in Norman, Oklahoma. Like, if you want to win that football game, you probably can't expect Bryce Underwood to go in to Norman, second career start against a Brent Venables called defense and put up 35 points. You know, that defense is going to have to play their tails off for Michigan to go get that done. I think they're capable of doing it, but we got to lean on them early in 2025. That's for sure. Until Bryce Underwood puts it together, and then we're off to the races. All right, we'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.